לו כתיף לו ביד, אלוהים ליעקב בחרתנו, ותבחר את התפילת על יד, ותבחר אלוהים ליעקב בחרתנו, ותבחר את התפילת על יד. כאן חיים כאן הדרך, כולם כאן כל ארצנו תוליד, נו לערב בחוות תפארת, יתנשא מלך המילים. נעשינו בערב בחוות תפארת, יתנשא מלך המילים.
Oh, thank you, Yoshi Ben. This is why I need an engineer. All right, I'll start again from the beginning. So, welcome to this week's Torah study. This week's World Alliance of Qara'im Torah study. This is Hakham Melech Ben Yaakov of the World Alliance of Qara'im. And well, I said some things, but it doesn't matter. Let's dig in right now. And I'll start off with, I guess, my monologue. So what do I think is going on in Israel? I mean, so far the IDF seems to be doing okay in Gaza, but we hear time and time again various people, various, how do they say, gormim in English, various, sources saying that Israel, it's impossible or it's unrealistic for Israel to think that it can ever completely eradicate Hamas. So that seems to be the party line. Essentially, I think what Israel wants to go for is, again, some kind of symbolic victory that basically, I think they want to kill this Sinwar guy and then declare victory because they're losing international support. Who knows? They claim that they're going to keep on going no matter what, but I know Israel better than it knows itself by now. And at the end of the day, they always do that. So it looks like what might be happening here is that Israel is going to create some kind of symbolic victory. I think they're going to try to bring in some kind of international force to rule over the Gaza Strip and declare some kind of symbolic victory, and then just cross the fingers and hope for the best, and which will only kick the can down the road for another situation to happen. I mean, the bottom line is Netanyahu, he needs to look like he's not responsible for all this mess. So if he can declare a victory and then, in 5 years he'll be out of office already or dead, who knows? He's not that young anymore, but not that old either. But then he could, it could all history can all record it as if it's someone else's fault, not his. I don't know. That's what it seems like. I mean, I know all of Israel's great declarations, how they're going to completely eradicate Hamas, and then they're going to push Hezbollah back to the north of the Litani River in Lebanon. But they're already saying they want to do that through diplomatic, discussions or through diplomatic, channels. Do you really think they're going to be able to? Hezbollah is going to withdraw to north of the Litani River, through diplomacy? Are you kidding me? Is that a joke or something? Of course, it's a joke. So I think that I still think Israel's in grave danger and in grave trouble. I don't personally know why Hezbollah hasn't entered yet, although they've definitely stepped up their attacks on the northern border. But I listen to a lot of people with their own analysis, and it seems maybe that Hezbollah doesn't feel it's time yet. They feel that Hamas kind of jumped the gun, and Hezbollah has its own problems. Iran has its own problems, internal problems and external problems. So maybe they want to stay out of it for now. Who knows? I don't know where it's all going to go. But I do know one thing, that Israel is now fundamentally a different country than it was the day before this happened on October 7th, 2023. The mentality or the the mood of the Israelis is completely different now. I mean, a lot of illusions have been shattered, and I don't know where it's all going to head. Does this mean that it's going to head to a much more right-wing government in the future, or does this mean that the powers that be, the deep state, is still going to hold on to power in Israel? The American loving, the American feet kissing, current leadership of Israel. They look like Americans, they sound like Americans, they worship their God known as the United States of America. I don't know. It all remains to be seen. I don't have any specific predictions. I have no way of having predictions. But if I were to just go with my gut feeling, I would say Israel's in deep trouble right now. That's what I would say. Israel's in deep trouble right now, potentially very, very deep trouble, and potentially, end of state of Israel level trouble. And so I think Israel is still relying on its enemies to be nice, or, that some kind of luck is going to happen with its enemies, that they're not going to join in, that Hezbollah is not going to join in, that Iran is not going to join in. And that's certainly not the only enemies that Israel has. Israel has plenty of enemies, and rightfully so, unfortunately, because this is our punishment for not following the true Torah. This is our punishment for following two false philosophies that Israel loves to follow. As I always like to say, the God of Tel Aviv, which is America in the West, and the current God of Jerusalem, which is the rabbis and the Talmud. So as long as that's happening, then I don't see things getting better. I really don't see how things can get better without some kind of fundamental change in Israel. And this could end up, what we saw on October 7th, could end up just being the beginning of what's going to happen. So that's the situation. All right. I guess that's all I have to say about that for today. We'll just have to, hang on and see how things play themselves out. In the meantime, we're going to dig into some Torah. And we're in Genesis 41. And as usual, I'll probably go back a little bit. So let's just see here. Let me bring up Genesis 41. Right, so let's see where we ended up. First of all, let me share the screen. Okay. It's working. Not so bad this week. Okay. Slowly. Of course, better. Okay. All right. So there we are. So we're in Genesis 41. Last week we left off in, let's see, we didn't get that far. Joseph and Potiphar's wife. We didn't get to that. And we didn't do Judah and Tamar. So I think we'll pick it up in Genesis 40, maybe in Genesis 39. Let's try it in Genesis 39. So this is now Joseph. Joseph has been taken down to Egypt, and he is put in charge of the house of Potiphar, Isar HaTabachim, which I like to translate as the lead executioner. Some people call him the head of the guard or something like that. Here, captain of the guard is his translation. So let's pick it up here in Genesis. Genesis 39. And let's see what we can come up with. Okay. And just a quick sound check. Everybody can hear me okay, I assume? Please share the study. Even right now, please share it. Please like it, subscribe, all that kind of nice stuff. Because I'd really like to grow the study. I'd really like a lot more people to be attending. I think it's important to study charism in this day and age when there's so much confusion out there. Okay. So verse 1. Yosef Hured Mitzrayma wa iknehu Potifar Sris Paro Sar HaTebahim Ish Misri Miyad Ishmaelim Asher Oriduhu Shama. So Yosef was brought down to Egypt, and he was purchased by this dude, this Egyptian dude who walked like an Egyptian named Potiphar, which seems to be a proper name. And he's Sara Tabachim, so that I think means chief executioner. It's usually translated as chief of the guard or captain of the guard. And it's used again later on. We'll see when Yosef's put in prison, that title. Verse 2. Wayehi Yahweh Eth Yosef Wayehi Ish Masliah Wayehi Bevet Adonah HaMitzri. So Yahweh was with Joseph, and this we see again and again, this phrase that Yahweh was with Joseph. Hold on 1 second, please. One second. One second. Okay, so Yahweh was with Joseph, and he was successful, and he was in the house of his master, this Egyptian. Again, I'm paraphrasing here because I'm going to move through it relatively fast. Yar Adonai ki Yahweh ito, v'chol asher hu oseh Yahweh masliach biyado. And his master picks up on the fact that God is with Joseph, and that everything that Joseph does, he is successful, right? Verse 4. וימצא יוסף חן בעיניו וישרת אותו ויף כדהו על ביתו וכל איש לו נתן בידו. So basically, again, to paraphrase, so this guy Potiphar, the chief executioner, put Joseph in charge of his entire household. Verse 5, ויהי מאז הפקיד אותו בביתו ועל כל אשר יש לו ויברך יחווה את בית המצרי בכלל יוסף ויהי ברכת יחווה בכל אשר יש לו בבית ובשדה. So because of this, God made this Egyptian successful. This is not the first time we've seen this, nor the last time, where because of a particular place or particular household taking in one of the patriarchs, that they were blessed. Verse 6, ויעזוב כל אשר לא ביד יוסף ולא ידע איתו מאומה, כי אם הלחם אשר הוא אוכל, ויהי יוסף יפה תואר ויפה מראה. So he left everything. He put everything in Joseph's hands, and he didn't have to worry about anything except his own food. So apparently, maybe he didn't trust Joseph to prepare his food, or perhaps it's relating to the fact that he was a Hebrew. We see later on that the Egyptians would not. It was considered an abomination for the Egyptians to eat with the Hebrews. Okay. Verse 7, why the Hebrews weren't kosher enough for the Egyptians. Plug my charges in. I will soon. Oh, and it mentions at the end that Joseph was he had a beautiful form and a beautiful appearance. Joseph was very, very good looking. It's a model material. And this, of course, leads into the next verse, which is that Eshet Adonau, his master's wife, set her eyes on Joseph. What Domer Shichva Haimi, and she said, "Sleep with me." Verse 8. What? And we see again here the word Shichva, which literally means lie down with me. When it's used in a sexual context, always means that. That sort of means have sex with me. Okay. ויאמר ויאמר אל אשת אדוניו הן אדוני לא ידעה איתי מה בבית וכל אשר יש לו נתן בידי. Verse 9. איננו גדול בבית הזה ממני ולא חסך ממני מאומה כי אם תח באשר את אשתו ואין ואף עשה הרעה הגדולה הזאת וחטאתי לאלוהים. So basically, again, I'm paraphrasing here. What Joseph is saying is that my master has left me in charge of anything. He has total faith in me, total trust in me. He doesn't keep an eye on me at all. And the only thing he's held back from me is his wife. And if I do this, then I will have sinned, not against my master, it says, but against God. Right? So Joseph is concerned with the morality, the moral implications of such a thing. It's not just that he's sinning against his master, which of course is good, but he is a moral person, we see here. I guess this can be contrasted with the way some people will say that Joseph acted in front of his brothers. I have read many commentaries where they say Joseph was immoral. He was arrogant with his brothers. He was callous to their needs. He thought he was their boss. But that's not immoral. And this is not much afterwards, by the way. He's not much older here. In fact, I think it says he's still 17 later on, if I remember correctly, when he's put in prison. So Yosef was always a moral person. He's just a young kid. He just, he's not careful with his words. But we see even at this young age that, and we know explicitly that he was 17 years old when he was sold. When he was sold to down to Egypt. So he's not much more than 17 here. I think it actually mentions the age again below. So he's around 17 years old here, and he already has a strong concept, an internal concept of right and wrong. And we see this with all of the patriarchs pretty much. We see this with Abraham, who fights against God, argues against God at his risk to his own life, more than his own life, his own very soul, his own existence. He puts his life on the line, or puts his soul on the line to fight for the city of Sodom. We see this with Moses, where he sticks up for the Hebrew that's being beaten by the Egyptians. The one thing that can be said about the patriarchs is that they have a very, very strong internal sense of right and wrong. And this, sadly, is one of the things the rabbis have destroyed with their form of Judaism. The focus of the Torah is morality. It's right and wrong. It's justice. It's doing the right thing. It's not what blessing you say before you eat a banana, or or how big your tefillin are, all kinds of ritual and irrelevant things. The essence of the Torah is being a righteous person. And here we see that Joseph, nobody would have known this. The wife certainly ain't going to tell Potiphar. And who knows? Maybe she was a nice, nice piece of ass. Potiphar's wife. Who the hell knows? Maybe she looked good too. So Joseph could have gotten away with this, you know, without any consequences, probably. In fact, as we see, by refusing, he faced the consequences as if he had done it. So he might as well have done it. But he didn't, and the reason is because he sees this as sinning against God. He sees it as a betrayal of trust and a betrayal of faith, and that is, in his eyes, sinning against God. Okay, verse 10. Why he kidabra el Yosef yom yom ulo sham'a eleha lishkav itzla liot ima. So she kept on nagging him. Now I know what you're saying. A woman nagging a guy? Impossible, right? That could never possibly happen. But this is the exception to the rule, and this woman nagged this guy. She not nagging. She kept on pressing him. She would not relent. ויהי כהיום הזה הוא יבוא הביתה לעשות מלאכתו, אין איש מאנשי הבית שם בבית. So one day he came home to do his daily tasks, and we see the word here is milacha. Milachto means his tasks, his work. The same word, it's the same thing that we are prohibited from doing on Shabbat and the Chagim. So it just shows that it gives us more insight as to what this word melacha means. And melacha just means tasks, the works, the things you have to do, right? Your daily tasks, your daily work. And there was nobody home. What? Tit sehu. בבגדו לאמור שכבה עמי, וזו בגדו בידה וינס ויצא החוצה. So she grabs him by his clothing and says, "Sleep with me." And he runs out. He leaves his clothing behind and runs outside. So now that's it. Now he's framed. That she invented the devil, sure. So Yosef is now going to be framed. This is the ancient Me Too movement. This is what's been going on for thousands and thousands of years. False rape claims against men. When women want to get back at men, then, they just play the victim. They did it back then. They do it now. This is one of their little techniques. And okay, so she's going to play the victim. She's going to lie. Yosef did not want to lie. He wouldn't betray his master by lying. But this bitch is going to lie and have Yosef thrown in prison. Just like we've seen so many times today, or attempts to destroy guys by making up false claims of sexual harassment, of rape. The list is endless in this day and age. So nothing's changed in 3,500 years, has it now? Okay, verse 13. Wahi kir ota ki hazav bichdo biyada yenasa chutza. And now we'll pick up the story. So he fled outside. I'm sorry, when she noticed that he'd left his clothing behind and ran outside, then ותקרא לאנשי ביתה, ותאמר להם לאמור ראו, הביא לנו איש עברי, לתחק בנו, בא אליי, ישכב עמי ויקרא בקול גדול. So now here's the false rape claim. She starts yelling out, playing the victim, making false sexual harassment accusations against Yosef long before the Me Too movement. And she says, so this is specifically what she says here. Look, they brought us, Larry says, he brought us, but it really means he's been brought to us also. They brought us a Hebrew man. And notice now that he's called a Hebrew. And this might be the first use of the word Hebrew. No, it's not. To Abram, yeah. Second use of the word Hebrew. So the first use ever of the word Hebrew, which this still question or look at, how do you say, differences of opinion as to what it means. But this is the first use ever of that word. So this is the story of the 4 kings versus the 5 kings. And that's the first time that any of our patriarchs are called Hebrew, right there in Genesis 14:13. So this is the second time. So ish ikviri litzachek banu. So now there's one particular idiot Karaite who I really don't have any patience for, but he always likes to say that whenever you see the word litzachek, that it means kind of like sexually molested. That's one of his things. And I don't think it means that here at all. Yes, it might have a double entendre because we are talking about, him, her wanting him to have sex, or her claiming that she tried to have sex with him. But I think it just means to mock, or to, to mock, to belittle, to make fun of us, to mock, because we see this word also in a clearly non-sexual context as well. So, anyway, that person likes to get a lot of attention, so if he could say something controversial, he always does. Okay, Manu ba elai lishkav imi vekra b'kol gadol. So they brought this Hebrew man, to mock us, and he came into me and tried to have sex with me, and that's when I started crying out in a loud voice. That's when I started screaming for help. Verse 15. And when he heard that I had raised my voice and started crying out, he left his he basically ran outside, leaving his clothing behind. Is that what happened? No, of course not. We know what really happened. So we see what a lying, you know, I won't say the word. Can I say the C word? What a lying C word she is. All right, verse 16. And she kept this piece of clothing, Joseph's piece of clothing, for what? Evidence. She really wants to, she's out for revenge. She is, a shunned woman. What is it? Hell hath no wrath. Hell hath no wrath. Like a woman scorned. Is that the phrase? Let's see. Hell hath has no fury. Like a woman scorned. Where is that from? No one is angrier than a woman who's been rejected in love. This proverb is adapted from a line in the play The Morning Bride by William Congreve, an English author of the 17th and early 18th century. Okay. Well, there you go. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. And here we have it. What holds true today held true 3,500 years ago. Nothing has changed. Verse 17. So, and I'm not going to go into. Listen, guys have their good points and their bad points. Women have their good points and their bad points. So I'm not going to, I don't want anyone to get insulted because I could be just as tough on the way we guys act. But one characteristic of a woman is that when their emotions take over, they won't hold, and they often do, they won't hold to any principles of right and wrong, any principles of morality. So remember, let's contrast that with Joseph. Joseph was so concerned, he could have totally gotten away with this whole thing, right? He could have, added this chick to his, his little marks on the wall, but he didn't, because he said it would be sinning against God. Okay, now contrast this with Eshet Potiphar, with the wife of Potiphar. Her emotions take over. She's hurt, and now, all rules of fair game, all sense of what's right and wrong, all morality goes completely out the window, and that is typical of women. Sorry to say, not all, but it's typical of a woman's approach towards the world. Yes, they have other wonderful qualities. They can take care of babies and raise them and help their husbands and all this kind of stuff. But one thing that is clearly very common back then and today is that when their emotions take over, then all bets are off. They'll do anything and everything. There's suddenly there's no level, there's no depth to which they will not sink to exact their revenge or to get what they want. Okay, and guys will not do that. Guys will still uphold some kind of principles, even if they've been wronged. Women don't generally feel the need to do that. All right, verse 18. Wahi kehari mi qoli ויקרא ויעזוב ביחדו אצלי וינס החוצה. So she's just telling the rest of the story, that when I cried out, he ran outside, leaving his clothes behind. Okay, verse 19. ויהי כשמוע אדוני את דברי אשתו אשר דיברה אליו לאמור, הדברים האלה עשה לי עבדך ויחר אפו. So now Master Potiphar is pissed off. So now look at the situation that Joseph is in. Okay, so imagine if Joseph says, "No, Master, this is not true. Your wife tried to seduce me." I mean, Yosef doesn't even make such an attempt because he knows it's going to be futile. Because imagine what that would mean. Okay, Potiphar would basically have to admit that his wife is an adulteress, that his wife doesn't love him, that his wife is disloyal to him, that some stranger he's brought into his household is now, the winner in a competition for, for her love, for her, lusts or love, whatever you want to call it. So he can't do that. He can't. That would wreck his entire world. He will never believe Yosef, because to believe Yosef would mean to accept the upheaval of his entire household, accept that this little kid, 17-year-old kid from the hill country, hundreds of miles away, is now his wife's boy toy. So he can't do that. So Yosef doesn't even try, or at least the Torah doesn't record that Yosef even tries to contradict or to tell the truth of what happened. And wisely so, because, and again, this just shows that Yosef, even in his young age, I think it shows that he had a certain amount of wisdom, and it shows just how real the story is. You can't make this stuff up. I mean, you can't. Okay, it just rings so true, everything that happens here, right? So Yosef, if he had tried to defend himself, he would have only made the situation worse. I mean, not only did you rape my wife or attempt to have sex with my wife, now you're calling her a liar? Off with his head. It would have made the situation worse. So Yosef, rightfully so, just accepted his punishment. He ended up marrying Pharaoh's daughter, not Potiphar's daughter. Well, it's not. That's spoken about later. Right? So Yosef, he's it's checkmate. There's nothing he can do. He just has to accept his punishment. He can't fight it. Fighting it would only make it worse. It's like if you're caught in a bear trap and you try to fight your way out, you're only going to make it worse. Verse 20, ויקח אדוני יוסף אותו, ויתנהו אל בית הסוהר, מקום אשר אסירי המלך אסורים, וישם בבית הסוהר. So that's it. He gets thrown into the dungeon. Literally, Beit HaSohar. That's what in modern Hebrew the prison or jail is called, Beit HaSohar. So Sohar, I'm guessing probably related to Asur. Just the haze kind of popped in there to make it the pronunciation flow more easily, but I'll check that in a second. And Asur means to restrain. So it basically means the house of restraint or something like that. Let me just check that. Make sure I didn't say something incorrect and stupid. Roundness. Since Sahar, the roundhouse. So that's what BDB is saying, the name of a prison, but perhaps Egyptian word Hebraized. Okay. I wonder where they get that from. Sahar, roundness. Songs. Argan Sahar Elisar. Okay, I think that's a lot of speculation because this word doesn't occur too much. I'm gonna guess that, like I said, another possible translation for the word. One second, please. One second. Okay, so I'm guessing maybe there's a possibility that the word Sohar is related to the word Asur, but it doesn't matter. Let's move on. Verse 21, Wahi Yahweh et Yosef wa yet Elau Hased Waitin Hino Ba'ine Sar Bet Soar. So God was with Joseph, and again we see this phrase: God is with Joseph. God is with Joseph earlier. Where's that verse? Right around here somewhere. I can't find it exactly, but it said that this Potiphar dude that saw that God was with Joseph, and everything he put his hands on was blessed. The Midas touch. So again, Yahweh is with Joseph. Yahweh is always with Joseph through this entire journey. And as a guy I've been listening to lately, it's not Bat Potifara. Yeah, you're right. My mistake, Yoshibin. Okay, well, we'll get to that probably today, and we'll talk about it. All right. So Yahweh is always with Yosef. I was going to say something and I forgot. Yeah, I've been listening to this guy lately. I highly recommend him. He is a Christian, so you'll have to put up with some Christian nonsense. But he has a series on, he calls it Unlocking the Old Testament. And as long as you can laugh off the Christian stuff, which he injects in there from time to time, sometimes for many minutes on end. But if you can ignore that or just laugh it off, then he has an excellent series called Unlocking the Torah. His name is David Pawson, Pawson. He basically goes through each book in the Old Testament and gives kind of a short talk about it, maybe up to an hour long. And so he says, look at Joseph's life. He goes from the top, from the highest position as the special son of his father, down to the lowest position, being a prisoner in a dungeon. Unlocking the Old Testament. That's what he calls it. Again, this guy's a Christian. There's a whole series Unlocking the New Testament as well. So, but really insightful kind of guy if you can put up with Christian nonsense. So right. So what was I going to say? Yeah. So he says that Joseph goes from the highest level down to the lowest level, being a prisoner in a dungeon for 13 years, back up to the highest level, being second in command to Pharaoh. So imagine the trajectory of Joseph's life, right? What he had to go through in his life. Okay. Okay, verse 22. ويتين صار بيت السهر بيد يوسف כל האסירים אשר בבית السهر ואת כל אשר עושים שם הוא היה עושה. So now God is with him, and the Sar Bet Soar, the head, the warden, basically, the chief warden, sees also that Yahweh is with Yosef and puts him in charge of the prison. So everywhere this guy Yosef goes, he's in charge. He was in charge of his brothers. He was in charge of Potiphar's house. He's in charge of the prison, and he's going to be in charge of all of Egypt. So even when he's at his lowest, he's still at the highest among the lowest, right? This guy rises to the top wherever he goes. Verse 22. I just read that. So basically, Joseph is in charge of the prison and all of the prisoners. Verse 23. This is almost the same phrase that we see, and deliberately so. The Torah is, when it does this kind of thing, when it repeats language, it's almost always deliberate. We see a lot of that. I'll give you an example in a second. In the Tanakh. So let's find the verse up above. Right. So here it is. So verse 6 says, "Ve'azov kol asher lo biyad Yosef." So this is speaking about Potiphar. He left everything He left all of his household or all of his business in the hands of Yosef. And didn't have any issues with him. I'm sorry. And he didn't deal with anything on his own aside from the bread which he ate. Okay, and here we have Insar bet Hasar ro'et et kol me'uma. It's the same word. Kol me'uma. He didn't have to deal with anything. Biado kasher Yahweh ito asher u ose Yahweh matzliach. So it's the same kind of language. I'm not going to go back and look for the other verse, but it also uses the word matzliach, which is to be successful. Up above, where is it? The point is, it's extremely similar language. So even though Yosef is now a prisoner, he's still, he obviously is the type of guy that people feel they can put him in charge of their whatever they're running, their little organizations. In this case, the prison. Okay. So now we're up to Genesis chapter 40. Now this is the second instance of Yosef and dreams. Wahi ahar advarim ha'ele hat'u shke melech Mitzrayim va'ofel adonehem lemelech Mitzrayim. So again, I'm going to paraphrase. So it was after these things, and whenever you see this phrase, Wahi acharei advarim ha'ele, it means sometime later. So sometime later, Chatu mashke melech Mitzrayim. So the chief cupbearer, here it just says the cupbearer, to the king of Egypt, literally it says they sinned, but it basically means they offended. They did something wrong. They somehow offended or created or did some kind of transgression against their master, the king of Egypt. So we have the cupbearer and the baker. ויחסוך פרעה על שני סריסהו, על שר המשקים ועל שר האופים. And Pharaoh got furious at them. Verse 3. ויתן אותם במשמר בית שר הטבחים. So he placed them in the guard of, and here we have Beit Sar Tabachim, the house of the guard, the chief executioner. This is the same title that we saw for Potiphar. Potiphar is called Sar HaTabachim. Let's look at this right here. Okay, so Potiphar. Right. So are we speaking about the same? Oops. 39. 40. So is this Sar Tabachim, the chief executioner? Is this now? Is this now that same dude, Potiphar? Probably. And I'm sure the commentaries have a lot to say about it. But again, I just want to move through this a little bit quickly. We could do one. Let's see. So this is 40, verse 2. Genesis 40. Verse 2. So here Robert Alter translates that as the High Chamberlain. And let's see here. This is page 439. So, yeah, Robert Alter doesn't really have any comment about that. Oh, okay. Okay. So basically, they're put in prison with Yosef. Verse 4, why yifkod sar hatabachim et Yosef itam, why yisharet otam, why yi'u yamim bamishbar. So he puts them, he puts Yosef in charge of them. Yisharet otam literally means he served them, but I don't think that's really what it means. Let's see how Robert Alter translates that one. He ministered to them. I think Robert Alter has something to say about that one. One second. Okay. So they were in jail for a while, and Yosef was in charge of them. Okay. Verse 5, وَيَحْلَمُوا حَلَوم شْنِهِمْ إِش حَلَمُوا بَلَيْلَ أَحَد إِش كِفِتْرون حَلْمُوا המשקה ופה אשר למלך מצרים אשר אסורים בבית הסוהר. So they each dreamed a dream that same night. They dreamed two dreams that same night, and the dreams were very similar, which of course again implies that this is from God, right? I mean, what are the chances of two different people dreaming very similar dreams on the same night? Clearly, this is from God. And Joseph obviously recognizes that this is from God. This is a message from God. Verse 6, why yavo alem Yosef b'boker v'yar otam wahinam zo'afim. So when Joseph saw them in the morning, he saw that they were upset. Zo'afim here, sad. Verse 8, what? ישאל את סריסי פרעה אשר איתו במשמר בית אדוניו לאמור מדוע פניכם רעים היום? So Yosef asks these two ministers, the cupbearer and the baker, literally, מדוע פניכם רעים היום? Why does your face look bad? Why do your faces look bad today? In other words, he saw in their faces something was wrong, right? They had something on the, they had fallen faces. And they said, Halom chalamnu, ופותר אין אותו, ויאמר אליהם יוסף, הלא לאלוהים פתרונים, ספרו נא לי. So they said to him, we dreamed dreams. Literally, actually, we dreamed a dream, but I don't think that's what it means. Although it could, this phraseology could be emphasizing the fact that their dream was one and the same, as Yosef kind of implies in his response. And we have nobody to interpret it for us. He says, are not interpretations in the hands of God, for God, but nonetheless, tell me. Okay? So Yosef, acting like a patriarch should, is always giving the honor, the credit to Yahweh, to God. Remember that Moses was not allowed into the promised land because he did not, in one instance, he did not give proper credit, proper honor to God. So remember, if you ever become a prophet, always give proper honor to God. Mention his name a lot, and you'll be good to go. Okay. Verse 9. מספר שר המשקים את חלומו ליוסף, ויאמר לו בחלומי הנה גפן לפניי. So the the cupbearer describes his dream and says, "Hine geffen nefanai." There's a geffen is a grapevine. My Hebrew school teacher when I was growing up, his name is Mrs. Geffen. So one of my Hebrew school teachers, who was the head of the school, who was Rabbi Safir. He was the nicest guy in the world. Oh my God, he was like a second father to all of us. Remember, he'd always sit me on his lap and he would squeeze my cheeks like this and then smack my cheeks. And he'd say, Melech, Melech, Melech. Such a good boy, but so much energy. So they always say he was the nicest guy in the world. Verse 10, Vagefen Shlosha Sarechim Wahi Ki Porahat Ata Nitza Hifshilo Eshkuloteha Anavim. Okay, so on this grapevine were 3 sarigim. A sarig is a branch or a shoot. So branches, but it really means more like a shoot. If you've ever grown grapes, which we have one here in the backyard growing, then you'll see there's kind of the main I guess trunk of the grapevine, and then in the springtime these kind of shoots come out, and off of those shoots, that's where the leaves form, and that's where the grapes will grow out of. So a grapevine looks very different in the wintertime than it does in the springtime, because the shoots will fall off, the leaves and the shoots fall off, and you're just left kind of with the trunk and some of the older shoots. So it really means a shoot. I wonder how Robert Alter translates that one. So this is verse 10. So slow. Tendrils. There you go. That's a great translation. 10. Okay. And maybe we just read some of these commentary afterwards. So these 3 tendrils shot out from the grapevine. And as it was flowering, basically it flowered, and in its flowering, its bud came out, and then it ripened into bunches of grapes. That's paraphrasing. If I were to translate word for word, it would be, and on this grapevine were 3 shoots or 3 tendrils, and in the process of its flowering, its bud came up, and I would stick in parentheses there. Eventually, the bunches of grapes ripened. And the bunches of grapes ripened. Okay, so in other words, it's describing the entire process from the initial budding all the way to the ripening of the grapes. So in this dream, this is what the Sarah Mashkim, this is what the chief cupbearer saw. He saw basically the entire process of 3 shoots coming out, then buds forming on the shoots, and then the buds blossoming, and the whole. He basically saw like one of those quick, those high speed or those time lapse videos of of a plant growing. So he saw the whole thing from the tendrils coming out to it budding all the way to the ripening of the grapes. וחוס פרעה בידי, ואקח את הענבים, ואשחט אותם, אותם אל כוס פרעה, ואתן את הכוס על כף פרעה. So Pharaoh's cup was in my hand. I took these grapes, I squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I handed the cup over to Pharaoh. Okay, well, I mean, hey, even I can figure that one out, kind of, but not to the degree that Yosef does, obviously, because Yosef is, well, we'll see in a second. Yosef said this is its interpretation. The three tendrils or the three shoots represent 3 days. Verse 13. יעוד 3 ימים יישא פרעה את ראשך והשיבך על קניך קניך ונתת כוס פרעה בידו כמשפט הראשון אשר היית משקהו. So another 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head, and we've seen this phrase many times, lifting up the head. I'm trying to think where we saw it not too long ago. I can't remember now, but this is a common phrase, meaning that Pharaoh, singles him out, or literally you could think of people lined up with their heads bowed down, and the person comes over and takes one person's head and lifts it up. It's almost like, choosing him out for good. And he's going to put you back into your appointed office. ונתת כוס פרעה בידו כמשפט הראשון, and I just want to see myself really. One second, please. ונתת כוס פרעה, and you will give Pharaoh his the cup in his hand, or his cup into his hand, כמשפט הראשון, as it was at first, literally as according to the rule, your former, where it says judgment, but it means basically you're going to be restored to your former office, when you were his cupbearer. Verse 14. אם זכרתני איתך כאשר ייטב לך ועשית נא מעדי חסד והזכרתני אל פרעה והוצאתני מן הבית הזה. So to paraphrase, now Yosef is saying, when this happens to you, please remember me, all the good that I did for you in interpreting this dream, and mention my name to Pharaoh, remember me to Pharaoh, that he can take me out of this place. So that's what Yosef says to the cupbearer. Ki gunavti me'eretz ha'ivrim, because I was stolen away. I was stolen or kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews. V'gam po lo asiti me'uma, and even here I haven't done anything wrong. Hisamu oti babor, and I haven't done anything to deserve them placing me in this dungeon. Okay. Uyar sar ha'ofim kitov patar. ויאמר אל יוסף, אף אני בחלומי, הנה 3 שרי חורי על ראשי. So now, again, I just love the story because it just shows human nature so wonderfully. So the baker sees that Yosef gave a good interpretation of the mashke, of the Sarah Mashkim, of the cupbearer's dream. And he says, oh, okay, great. This guy, and now it's my turn. This Yosef is, he said that the other guy is going to be restored to his former office. So I'm sure he'll say the same about me, right? At least I hope so. I'm willing to bet he will. tells his dream. There were 3 baskets of hori, is usually translated as white wheat or something like that, white bread. Verse 17. So in the top basket are all the things that Pharaoh loves the best, all the baked goods, Pharaoh's favorite baked goods, and the birds are eating, and they're on the top, they're stacked on the top of my head, and the birds are eating the bread out of this basket, out of the top basket. Verse 18. And Yosef said, this is its interpretation. The 3 baskets represent 3 days, just like in the previous one. So the baker's probably saying, "Oh wow, I'm gonna get the same interpretation," but not so fast. Verse 19. So in another 3 days, Pharaoh will lift your head up from off of you. In other words, he's going to behead you and hang you on a gallows, on a tree. And the birds will pick your flesh off of you, pick your flesh from off of you. So there's a play on words here. So here we saw with the a little bit. Excuse me. So we saw, but in another 3 days, speaking to the cupbearer, in another 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head, meaning he'll, again, that's a phrase which means will draw you back to him, will single you out for good. And here it says, Isa paro et roshecha, okay? But it adds the word me'alecha. So here it says, let me just single out the 2 phrases. Another 3 days, Isa paro et roshecha. Pharaoh will lift up your head. Again, that's a phrase in the Tanakh, meaning will, single you out for good. But here it says the exact same thing. Ba'od shloshit yamim, the same words exactly. Actually, starting from here. Let's see. 1 second. So from here, second. From here to here, it's exactly the same words. Zepitronoro, shloshit hasarigim. Here it's sarigim, here it's shoots, there it's salim. Shloshit sarigim, shloshit yamim hem, ba'od shloshit yamim yisa paro et roshecha. And here we have זה פתרונו, 3 הסלים, 3 ימים הם, בעוד 3 ימים יישא פרעה את ראשך. It's exactly the same words, aside from here it's the salim, baskets, and here it's the sarigim, shoots, because the first is the cupbearer and this is the baker, but nonetheless, aside from that, it's exactly the same words, word for word, except here, in the case of the baker, the word me'alecha is added, and that means I will lift your head up off of you. He will lift your head up off of you and hang you on the tree, and the birds will eat your flesh. So sometimes it's best just to shut up and not ask too many questions. They say in Hebrew, in modern Hebrew, shelat kitbeg. Sometimes you have to know when to shut up. So he pressed his luck, and well, didn't work out. Verse 20. Yom Uledet et Pharaoh. So on the 3rd day was Pharaoh's birthday, literally the day of the birth of Pharaoh, and that is in modern Hebrew what a birthday is called. It's still called the Yom Huledet from these verses right here. Okay, and I don't know if birthdays are mentioned anywhere else in the entire Tanakh. I'm sure they are. Just not remember. That's not showing who led it specifically. Okay. So Pharaoh made a big festival, big feast, the whole Avadao for all of his servants. We saw it, the Rosh Sara Mashkim, and he singled out, literally lifted up the head of the Sara Mashkim, of the cupbearer, with Rosh Sara Ofim betoch Avadav. So he singled out from among his servants the cupbearer and the baker, meaning he, chose them out. He called for them. Wayeshev et Sar Hamashkim al Mashkehu, Oiten Akos al Kafaro, and the cupbearer returned to his former office, handing or placing the Pharaoh's cup in his hand. In Pharaoh's hand, et Sar Haofim Talak Asher Patar Lehem Yosef. And he hanged the baker, just as Yosef had predicted, as Yosef had interpreted the dreams. Lo zachar Sara mashkim et Yosef wa ishkachehu. And the cupbearer did not remember Yosef, rather, but he forgot him. Okay, and the emphasis here, this is repetition. Lo zachar Sara mashkim. He did not, at Yosef, the cupbearer did not remember Yosef, rather he forgot him. Okay, so this repetition is used for emphasis. The rabbinical commentaries like to have or not all the rabbinical commentaries, but idiots like Rash, he has a field day with this kind of thing. In fact, let's have some fun and look it up. So this is Genesis 40:23. We can look at Rash and see his interpretation. Rash, where's Rash? Genesis? Yeah, wait a second. Let's go down here. 1 second. Rash. Genesis 40:23, we said. Genesis 40:23. And it's just amazing how much time the rabbinical Jews, instead of actually learning Tanakh, they will waste their time on these useless commentaries. I won't say they're completely useless. Rashi does say interesting things sometimes, but very often he does not. Rather than actually studying the Tanakh, and as I always like to say, the hardest book to find in a rabbinical synagogue is the Tanakh. And it's really true. You will see every book. Go into a rabbinical synagogue and say, and ask, where's the Tanakh? And they will have a hard time locating a Tanakh. You'll see the Talmud, the Gemara, the Mishnah Torah, the Shulchan Aruch, everything. But ask them for Tanakh, and they're like, I think it's around here somewhere. No, it's not there. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know where it is right now. Seriously, try it sometime. You'll see exactly what I mean. And that's disgusting. Okay, so, right. So we're looking at Rashi on 40:23. Velo zacharet et Sara mashkim bo beyom. Okay. So he's just saying on that particular day. That's obvious. That's retarded. I'm sorry to say, but that's a useless commentary because it's obvious he didn't remember him on that day. Later on, he does remember him. We know that. Hold on, my cat is staring at me. What, Shoshi boy? What do you want, sweetheart? Show him. What do you want, sweetie? I'm not going to feed you now. Soon. Come here, baby. Come. Okay. Vishkachehu lachar miman mipnei shetala bo Yosef lezachro zkak liot asur shtei shanim שנאמר אשרי הגבר אשר שם השם מבטחו ולא פנה אל רחבים ולא בטח על מצרים הקרויים רהב. Okay, so this is a typical Rashi kind of interpretation, and this is just an absolutely horrible interpretation. Okay, so we can go through it just for some, kicks and giggles. So this is typical Rashi garbage. Okay. So he's saying, so he says, "V'yishkachehu lachar mikan." So here he's saying he didn't remember him on the same day. Oops. And he forgot him afterwards. So this is the first idiotic statement that Rashi's making. So he's taking this kind of medieval Jewish idea that the Torah can have no extra words. And indeed, hold on a second. Shoshi boy, no, can't do that. Shoshi boy, can't do that, sweetheart. Sham. So he's taking this simplistic idea that the Torah cannot have any excessive word. Hold on, I gotta deal with the cat for 1 second. Shoshi boy, you can't do that, sweetheart. Come here. Come on. Johan, can't do that. You can't do that, sweetie. No. And that excessive words have some kind of, hidden meaning or some kind of, meaning that you have to read into these excessive words. Now, these excessive words, as I've mentioned many times, I mentioned pretty much every Torah study, when you have excessive words, particularly synonyms or synonymous ideas, and these are synonymous ideas. He didn't remember, so that the cupbearer did not remember Yosef, but rather forgot him. That is emphasis. I'm sorry, that's repetition. Repetition means emphasis, but in Rashi's stupid mind, repetition means hidden meaning. So now Rashi is going to extract the hidden meaning, which only comes through the oral law, and that we wouldn't have known otherwise if we didn't read Rashi, who is now giving us the true meaning according to the oral law. Of course, it's all a bunch of baloney, but that's exactly what the rabbis do. So he's saying, what is the repetition here? Lo zachar sara mashkim. He did not remember. The cupbearer did not remember Joseph on that day, and afterwards he forgot him. So on the day he didn't remember him, and afterwards he forgot him. So basically, this is referring to, did not remember is referring to the same day when the cupbearer was taken out of the prison, and forgot him is referring to afterwards, after that day. That is a bunch of baloney. That's not the way the language in the Torah works. And Rashi's an idiot. And if he were here in front of me right now, I'd smack him upside his head. Okay. And then he goes on to say another bunch of baloney. So because Yosef depended on him to remember him. And his punishment for depending on the cupbearer was that Yosef would now, hold on, I have to see what the cat is doing. 1 second, please. I'm sorry. Shushi boy, you cannot go crazy now. Come here. I'm putting you outside. Come here, sweetheart. Come here, you. Come here. Come outside. Can't start wandering around going crazy. Go. It's almost sunset, and the cats get very active at this hour, as anyone who is a cat owner or dog owner knows. They're not nocturnal. They are, I forgot what it's called, this technical name for it. They become very active right around dusk. Okay. So because he placed his trust in this cupbearer, so his punishment for that is that he has to remain another 2 years in prison. That's ridiculous. Okay. Shne'emar, as it is said, Ashrei hagever asher sam Hashem miftacho velo pana el rehavim. So now Rashi is quoting Psalm 50 and saying, so what is the problem? What is Rashi's problem? What's bothering Rashi? Rashi's bothering me, but what's bothering Rashi is Ashrei gever asher sam Hashem miftacho. Happy is the man who places Hashem, who places God as his trust. Velo pana el rehavim, and does not turn to the, I don't know what rehavim is. I'd have to look it up. We could look it up very briefly. So that's Psalms 40. Havim. So here they translate as the defiant to the proud. Okay, fair enough. Let's just get this in English. So 44. Blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, who does not look to the proud, to those who turn aside to false gods. Okay, so that's what Rahavim means, at least according to the NIV, which usually has pretty good translations. And if we go back to Rashi, so he says that the word Rahavim actually means not the proud, but means the Egyptians. Velo batach al Mitzrim. And he does not rely or does not have faith in Egyptians who are called Rahav, and the Egyptians who are called Rahav. Why are they called Rahav? The Egyptians are called arrogant. Where are they called arrogant? In another stupid rabbinical midrash known as Genesis Rabbah. I'm not going to look it up. And he's quoting, or he's ultimately relating that, or Genesis Rabbah is ultimately relating that back to Isaiah 37. Let's check out Isaiah 37 for a second. Okay, so in Isaiah 37, Hebrew, whoa, Isaiah 37, Tzrim hever warik yazru lachen karati lazot rahav hem shavet. Okay, it's a bit of a confusing verse, but let me go to the English for a second because I don't want to pick it apart now. Hebrew. So to Egypt, whose help is utterly useless, there I call her Rahav, the do nothing. Okay, so in Isaiah 37, the Egyptians are literally poetically called Rahav, the arrogant ones, the do nothing. But that is not a this is not a logical train of thought that Rashi is putting forth here. Okay, what he's doing is he's doing something called I guess it would be Gzera Shava or Hekesh. I forgot the technical term, but basically he's taking two words. He's taking the same word in two different saying because the same word is used in those two different contexts, that somehow there's some secret relationship between those two things. So this is a very illogical or illogical way to look at the Torah. Happy is the man who makes the Lord his trust and turns not to Rehavim. So look what he's doing here. Okay, he's criticizing Joseph, the cupbearer, to mention him to Pharaoh. That's his first, I'm sorry, but stupid interpretation. What the heck is Joseph supposed to do? Joseph is supposed to say nothing. Joseph is just supposed to wait for God to save him. Doesn't God help those who help themselves? So Rashi, first of all, here should be hung from the gallows along with the Sara Mashkim. I'm sorry, with the Sara Ofim, with the chief baker, for making such a stupid statement, and actually then teaching his students that no, you shouldn't do anything to solve problems on your own. You should wait for God to come and rescue you, and you should just remain quiet. Okay, that's ridiculous. Joseph, of course, did exactly the right thing by asking the cupbearer to mention him to Pharaoh. What else is he supposed to do? He wants to get the heck out of there. I mean, wouldn't any normal human being supposed to do it? But Rashi, in his medieval stupidity, his medieval rabbinical stupidity, thinks that Yosef should be above that. Yosef should just wait patiently for God to come save him. No, God saves those who save themselves. God helps those who help themselves. So that's Rashi's first stupid thing. Absolutely, Sam Suriel. I love that. Rashi, as all rabbis, are overrated. They had their time. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. They are way overrated. They had their time when most people were illiterate. Now they are useful tits on a bull. Exactly. So that's his first thing. I mean, that's already pisses me off. That already makes me want to slap him upside his head and hang him on the gallows together with the head baker. And then he quotes Psalm 40, saying, "Happy is the man who places his faith in God." Yeah, no kidding. But that doesn't mean you don't do anything. Did David sit around and wait for God to fight the Philistines? No, he went out and fought the Philistines with the help of God. You take action and God helps you. Velo pana el rehavim. So the real main thing is that he's saying that this verse, because it doesn't say, and do not turn towards the arrogant. In other words, don't place your faith in God and don't rely on the arrogant ones. So first of all, Sarah Mashkim, he was not arrogant, okay? But then he quotes Genesis Rabbah, quoting Isaiah 37, who says the Egyptians are called arrogant, and indeed they are in Isaiah 37. So basically he's chaining these words together to make what looks like, oh, I have to plug in a second, make what looks like a clever connection, but it's an illogical connection. It doesn't logically flow. Only if you have this kind of crazy rabbinical view of the Torah and the Tanakh does this make sense. If you think like a normal human being, it doesn't make any sense, because the Rehavim that's being mentioned, Rashi is implying that where it says do not rely on the arrogant in Psalms 40 verse 5, that it's secretly speaking about the Egyptians, or at least that the Egyptians are called the arrogant ones, so therefore do not rely on the Egyptians. That's not what it's saying at all. It's saying don't rely on the arrogant ones, and then in another place it's saying that the Egyptians are arrogant. Okay? Doesn't mean that because of that you're not allowed to rely on anyone who happens to be an Egyptian. It's just stringing things together in an illogical way that works if you have a bizarre rabbinical way of looking at the world, but if you think logically, it doesn't work at all. Okay, so that's picking apart Rashi. I'd like to have the birds pick his flesh apart, just like they did to the Sarah Ophim, the chief baker. But that's the end of Genesis chapter 40. We're going to take a break now for a little while I plug in. I drink a little bit of my leftover coffee and turn it into iced coffee. So today I ground up. I buy these small batch coffees. Rashi's like the guy on the roof in the flood. So I buy these small batch coffees. So I have one from Honduras today that I ground up and added some cardamom, then put it in a French press. God, that was good. But now I have a little bit left over. I'll turn it into some iced coffee, and we'll take a break for about 10 minutes or so. And then when we come back, we're going to start on Genesis chapter 41. So let me put some music on. Man, those rabbis just boil my blood. They really do. Okay.
סיר לו כתיף לו ביד, אלוהים ליעקב בחרתנו, ותבחר את אחיו לגליל, ותבחר אלוהים ליעקב אלוהים לשלטון וחרתנו, על אבק וגזול ואדום. אלוהים לשלטון וחרתנו, על אבק וגזול ואדום.
היום שרה הקטנה, ניפגש בצאתי למלחמה, את המדינה לכונן, בשתי גדות הירדן גזזי צמתך, וחגרי את הגורתך, חתיני מקלע ואיתי לשורה, עלי בריקדות ניפגש, עלי בריקדות, חירות ניסה בדם באש, רובה אל רובה בני יסיע, כדור אל כדור יריע, עלי בריקדות ואם בתליה אמסור את חיי לאומה, אל נא תבכי, כך נגזר גורלי, מחי דמעתך, לחצי המקלע אל ליבך, ובחרי לך שני מאנשי גונדתי, עלי בריקדות ניפגש, עלי בריקדות, חירות ניסה בדם באש, רובה אל רובה בני יסיע, כדור אל כדור יריע, עלי בריקדות ניפגש, עלי ניפגש, עלי בריקדות, חירות ניסה בדם באש, רובה אל רובה בני יסיע, כדור אל כדור יריע, עלי בריקדות
מעוזו ישועתי, לך נאה לשבח, תיקון בית תפילתי, בשם תודה נזבח, לעת הכין מטבח, ניצב ונבח, אז אגמור בשיר מזמור, חנוכת המזבח. המזמור, חנוכת המזבח. נעשו ישועתי, וחנאה לשבח, תגובי תפילתי, ושם תודה נזבח. לעת הכין מטבח, ניצר המנבח, אז אגמור לשיר מזמור, חנוכת המזבח. אז אגמור לשיר מזמור, חנוכת המזבח. טו 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 טו
I usually disguise it as girls, we've been picking on you all night long. This is a love song for you. Bunny, for you. Her period arrived just the other day. Slopped on her leg in the usual way. But there were crabs to catch, bills to pay, so she worked on the street anyway. And as I ate her out, it occurred to me that extra slops for free. My tongue's like a ladle, but I brought a spoon. Gotta hurry up, it's gonna dry up soon. 28 days and it's back again, but we'll get together then, sis. You know we'll have our
Okay, we're back. Let's do this here. Okay. And this goes bye-bye. This goes like that. And that goes like that. Okay, there we go. All right, welcome back to the Torah study. Any questions, any comments so far? Anybody? We'll probably go for another half an hour to an hour max. And then we'll call it quit for the day. Okay, if there are no other questions, no other comments, then let me share the screen. Thing very quickly. Window, Toyota. Yeah, right. No, I won't. I'm really gonna try. I do want to end early today. I know. I always say that and I never do. But okay. All right. Let's see here. So, all right. So we did Rashi. Now, if you want to see really good commentary, as I always say, one of my favorite commentaries is the Ibn Ezra. He's amazing. And this just gives you contrast. I don't know if he has anything to say about this particular verse, but let's go take a look. So again, that was 41. That was 40. 40:23. No, this time I really am. I kind of do want to end a bit early because otherwise things just run too late around the house here. Okay, let's see here. Where did we go? Ibn Ezra. So this is Genesis. What did we say? 40:23. 40:23. So he does have something to say. V'lo zachar Sara mashkim lo hiskiro b'peh el faro ken masa shem lo tizkiru od zachar et Vashti. So Ken. Okay. So here, Ibn Ezra was making a great comment. So Ibn Ezra is making, I'm not sure I agree with Ibn Ezra's comment, but it is a great comment. So he's saying V'lo zacharet Sara mashkim doesn't mean that he didn't remember the cupbearer, that he completely forgot about it. It meant he didn't mention him. Lahaskir is what's called the hifil, or the causative form of the verb zachar, which means to remember. So it means to cause to remember. In this case, to cause Pharaoh to remember or to mention Joseph to Pharaoh. So Ibn Ezra is making a very, very brilliant point. And he's saying that what it really means when it says that Shoshi boy, no, I'm gonna have to put you outside. No, can't do that, sweetheart. No, sweetie boy. That when he says he didn't remember the cupbearer, what it really means is he. One second, I have to put. No, can't do that, Shosho. Come here. Come here, you. Come here. Come. Rest. Rest on the couch. You start going crazy. I have to put you outside. Go. Stay there. So it doesn't mean that he didn't remember him. It means he didn't mention he didn't remember him to Pharaoh. And then Ibn Ezra brings two proof verses. Hashem lo taskiru od. Zachar Vashti. So, and he's bringing two other verses. I'm not going to hunt them down now. We could go to them. But basically, he's trying to say that when the word zachar is used, although in this first case it is the causative form to skiru od, But here's a Rashi that actually there's evidence to show that it really does mean not to remember, but to mention. Okay, you have to put the cat outside. Just 1 second. And then he says, "V'yishkahe b'lev." He forgot about him in his heart. So he didn't mention him to Pharaoh, and then he completely forgot about him. Now that makes a lot more sense. I actually don't agree with it. Okay, I think it's but I actually think it's, as I mentioned before, it's repetition. So the repetition is emphasizing that he, it's basically saying he completely forgot about Joseph. But nonetheless, even though I don't agree, I don't think with Ibn Ezra's, I'd have to think about it more, but I don't agree with his interpretation. What he is saying is that this means that he didn't remember, the cupbearer didn't remember Joseph to Pharaoh, and then ultimately completely forgot about him. And I think that is that's at least a logical, contrast that, I'm going to put the cat outside, contrast that line of thinking, which maybe I disagree. The cat is literally, what are you doing? What are you doing? Don't you, boy? I know you go crazy this time of night, but you can't do that. Out, 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 out. No. Oh my God. All right, so I agree with it. Again, I think that the repetition is to emphasize, like saying he completely forgot Pharaoh, but at least the Ibn Ezra's interpretation is logical. It makes sense. Contrast that with Rashi's interpretation, which makes no sense. It just doesn't make sense. Okay, and Rashi is held on high as the greatest Torah commentator ever. And I always say that he's the worst Torah commentator ever that I've ever come across. He's a horrible Torah commentator. And the rabbis always say if you want to, he brings the pshat. Pshat means a simple meaning. No, he doesn't bring the pshat. He does just the opposite. He brings midrashic, and he brings midrashic interpretations, and I mean that in two ways. Basically like fabled or expositions, and also using the rules for midrashic interpretation. No, he doesn't bring the simple meaning at all. And this just shows how twisted the mind of the rabbinical Jews are, sadly. And this again just shows that why what's happening to Israel, to bring it back to current events, in my opinion, is happening because the chickens are coming home to roost. Yahweh is, I don't speak for Yahweh, I'm not a prophet, I'm not the son of a prophet, I'm just a simple shepherd. But that's, whoever knows the line knows the line. But it just shows. I'm sorry. What I was saying, I lost my train of thought. What I was saying is that this crazy way of thinking, which is considered which is considered the straightforward way of thinking, just shows how far off the rabbis are, and it shows that this is one of the two philosophies destroying the nation of Israel. The other being Hellenist, Western / American, liberal or just even Western ideas, Western philosophy. Bringing it again back to the people or to the situation in Gaza. So, I mean, I've given this a lot of thought, and I think that the correct course of action would be, well, I don't want to get banned on Facebook or YouTube. Basically, would be to do. Oops, why did I get unplugged? What's going on here? 1 second, please. Charging. 1 sec, please. Wires all over the place. Okay, 1 second. There we go. Okay, would be to do to the people of Gaza what they're accusing us of doing. Yeah, I can type it out in chat. Okay, I will type it out in chat. There you go. So there you have it. If that's what they're accusing us of doing, if that's what they want to do to us, then that would be the proper way to deal with them. End of story. Yeah, of course they do. You know what? And kill them all and let Allah sort them out. I'm sure there are a couple of good ones here and there. That shouldn't be our business. That's for Allah. Figure out who the good ones are. And if he wants to save their butts, then he can save their butts. Okay. Why did it not go on? Okay. So, anywho, so let's go on now to Genesis 41. So now we have Pharaoh's dreams. Remember, all of Joseph's entire trajectory in his life is driven by him being an interpreter of dreams, a dreamer and an interpreter of dreams. Oh, here we go with the beach ball. I don't know why this happened. Oh, it stops. Okay. Driven by his being no. Oh shoot, froze up. I'm so sick of this. I really need like an engineer to work while I do these studies. All right, we're just gonna have to wait another second. Now we get the beach ball again. Can't figure out why it happens. I have no way of stopping it. Just have to wait. There's nothing I can do. No idea what this happens. Every week happens once. And I uninstalled Chrome and then I tried to reinstall it. Maybe I have to uninstall the operating system. I'm not going to do that. I'm not reinstalling the operating system. It's ridiculous. I just don't know why this happens. Okay, just have to wait. All right. Usually takes about 3 to 5 minutes and then it just stops. Check in on the news in Israel. Let's see what's going on. Assuming you guys can hear me. Yeah, same old baloney. Okay, I guess we're back. Okay. All right, I guess we're back. Okay, so let me share the screen. There we go. Let's go into Genesis chapter 41. So these are the dreams of Yosef. One second, please. No cleaning up of anything now. Okay, let's go on to Genesis chapter 41 here. So this is actually the beginning of our parsha. That's fine. Verse 1, Wahi Miketz Shnatayim Yamim. Faro hole wahine umed al hayor. So that goes back to Rashi's comment where he said the punishment for Joseph relying on Sarah Mashkim, on the cupbearer, was instead of on directly on God, was that Joseph had his punishment was to remain in prison for 2.5 years, for another 2 years. I'm sorry, an absolutely retarded comment. Okay, wahine mina yaor olot sheva parot yefot mar'eh ubriot basar what tir'ena be'ahu. So here's Pharaoh's dream. We know our Pharaoh's dream out of the Nile or out of the river, out of the Nile. 7 good-looking cows, healthy, good-looking cows, or plump, good-looking cows, and they began to graze in the Ahu. Ahu, I think, is only mentioned this one time in the entire Tanakh. It's usually understood as reeds. No, it's mentioned a number of times. Reeds or rushes. I think they think it's an Egyptian word, perhaps Aramaic. Originally Egyptian. Compared to Demotic Aksu from Aksu Green, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So this is the beginning of Pharaoh's dream. So 7 fat cows come out of the Nile and start grazing in the reeds around the Nile. Wahine sheva parot aherot orlot arehen mina yaor raot mar'eh with dakot basar with amodna etzel parot al sfat hayor. And then 7 other cows, and just the opposite, instead of yafot mareh, instead of good looking or beautiful looking, bad looking, ugly cows or not looking healthy, dakot basar, and thin, undernourished, and they stood next to the original cows on the shore of the Nile. Verse 4, what tuchal na haparot ra'ot hamareh ודקות הבשר את 7 הפרות יפות המראה והבריאות ויקץ פרעה. And the bad-looking cows, the bad-looking undernourished cows ate the good-looking fat cows, and then yikatz Pharaoh, and then Pharaoh's dream ended. Pharaoh woke up. Verse 5. Wa'ishan wa'echlom shanit wahine 7 balim olot b'kane ehad briot v'tovot. Okay, so he has another dream, and there are 7 shibalim is, so they translate here as heads of grain. So it's basically like the seeds, like on a wheat stalk or on a barley stalk. So sheva shibalim olot b'kane had briot v'tovot. So 7 healthy. They usually translate as ears of corn, but it means like seed, wheat seeds on a single stalk, and they were healthy and good and of good quality. Verse 6. Wahine sheva shibalim dakot ushitufot kadim sumchot acharehem. And then 7 thin and shtufot kadim. So they usually translate this as blasted by the east wind. So shaduf, I think it's probably related to the word shazuf. D and z are interchangeable. Or are similar phonemes. So here they translate as scorched. Blasted, they often translate it as. So shaduf in modern Hebrew, if you catch a suntan, if you get suntan, it's called lishtazef, shazaf. Here it's shadaf. So I think and d and z are, as I said, very similar phonemes. You have interchange between the d and the z sound. In fact, one in Arabic, one letter, if it has a dot in it, is a d, and without the dot is a z. So d and z are very similar. And if you do d and z in your mouth, you'll see they both come from very similar parts in the mouth or places in the mouth. So shaduf probably means scorched. So shdufot kadim. Kadim means easterly. So it's speaking about being blasted by the easterly wind. The easterly wind we see many times throughout the Torah. So, for instance, it's the easterly wind that that separates the waters in the Red Sea when the Israelites escape. It's the eastern wind that brings in the locusts during the 10 plagues against Pharaoh. Those are just two examples. So basically, we have these fat wheat seeds, right? So again, we're talking about this. Right? So each of these is a, or these are shivalim that's being spoken about here. Okay, so basically a grain, a seed grain. They usually translate as grains of corn because in British English, the word corn doesn't mean what we in America think of corn. It just means grain, specifically wheat. Ah, Shabbat Shalom, Antoinette. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. So, okay, so then we have the 7. Then we have another stalk that grows up next to it, and instead of 7 fat grains, we have 7 thin grains. Oops. That have been dried out, that have been scorched by the east wind. And then we have the same thing. What tiv la nara hashibolim hadakot et sheva hashibolim havriot wahameleot. And then the 7 thin wheat seeds, grain seeds, swallow the 7 fat ones. Wayikatz Pharaoh v'hinechanu. And Pharaoh wakes up and he realizes he's had a dream. Verse 8. Wahi baboker watipa'em ruho waishlach wayikra et kol hartumei Mitzrayim. And so in the morning, his tipa'em ruho, his spirit was he had a restless spirit. So he had this dream, and this was now bothering him. He couldn't get his mind off it. Waishlach vayikra et kol hartumei Mitzrayim, and he sent and called for all of the Khatumei Mitzrayim, usually translated as the Egyptian magicians, the Egyptian wise men. Wa'et kol chachameha. I'm sorry, that's wise men. So all of the Egyptian wizards or Egyptian magicians, and all of literally her wise men, meaning Egypt's wise men. V'yisaper Paro lahem et hanomo wa'en poter otam leFaro. And he explained, and Pharaoh explained his dream to them. And there was no one who could interpret it for Pharaoh. Verse 9. Vaydaber sar hamashkim et Paro lemor. And now the cupbearer speaks up and says, Et hata'ai ani maskir hayom. Says, I remember, I will mention to you my past indiscretions. Paro katzaf al avadao wa'itin oti b'mishmar bet sar hatabachim oti wa'et sar ha'ofim. Pharaoh was angry at his servants, and he placed me in the house of the Sarat Tabachim, the house of the chief executioner, which again could be Potiphar. Me and the chief baker. So now, finally, the chief cupbearer is going to mention Joseph to Pharaoh 2 years later, after he got out of jail. Verse 11. ונח למה חלום בלילה, אחד אני והוא איש כפתרון חלומו חלמנו. And we dreamed a dream that night, or in a single night, in one particular night, me and him, meaning me and the chief baker, ish kapitron halomo halamnu, and each one, according to its own interpretation, did we dream a dream. Okay, in other words, each dream had its own meaning. Wisham itanu na'ar ivri, so there was with us a Hebrew youth, and he's called a na'ar. Na'ar usually means, roughly speaking, up until the age of around 20. Again, showing that Yosef was very young at this point when he was in jail. Eved, well, we know exactly how old he was. No, I will take that back, because we know that Yosef gets out of jail at the age of 30. We know that this is 2 years later, after the cupbearer and the baker had the dream. So that means Yosef was exactly 28 at that point. He's called here Na'ar, a young man. So Sham itanu Na'ar Ivri. So there was a young Hebrew man. Eved l'sara tabachim. He was the slave or the servant to the chief executioner, basically the head of the jail. When he saper lo yiftar lanu et halomotenu, and we described our dreams to him, and he interpreted our dreams. Ish kehalomo patar. Each person, according to each particular person. Verse 13. Why כאשר פתר לנו, כן היה, אותי השיב על כני ואותו תלה. And just as he had interpreted to us, so it was. אותי השיב על כני, he returned, and this is speaking to Pharaoh, so he's speaking directly to Pharaoh, but he's speaking to him in the third person. He returned me to my former office, to my office, and he hanged him. And I guess it's in the third person because it's meant to be in the super polite form, right? Kind of like in Spanish, the usted form. In Portuguese, the você form, or even in Hebrew, you will sometimes hear people in very formal situations speaking to another person in the third person. Okay. Verse 14, Vayishlach Paro, Vayikra et Yosef, Vayarisuhu, Minabor, Vayigalach, Vayachlef, Sinotao, Vayavo et Paro. And Paro sent and called for Joseph and hurried him up from the dungeon and had him shaven and had him change his clothes, and he came to Pharaoh. So basically, he's taking off his prison clothes and now putting on clothes that would be appropriate for coming before the king. Verse 15. Yomer Paro el Yosef Harom Halamti. Poter enoto wa ani sham'ati alecha lemor tishma hanom wa liftoroto. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I've dreamed a dream, and nobody's been able to interpret it. And I've heard about you that they say that if you hear a dream, that you can interpret it. Ya'an Yosef et Paro lemor bil adai Elohim ya'ane et shalom Paro. And Yosef answered, and he said, Yosef answered Paro, and he said, certainly, or if he so chooses, God will give an answer regarding the peace of Paro. Peace, P-E-A-C-E. See how Robert Alter translates that one. Genesis 41:16. Okay, so he translates it as, not I, God will answer for Pharaoh's well-being. Yeah, that's a very good translation. Okay. Okay, verse 17. Vaydaber Paro el Yosef. And now Pharaoh speaks to Joseph. B'halomi hinini omed al sfat hayor. In my dream, I am standing on the shore of the Nile. Verse 18. Wahine mina yaor olot sheva parot briot basar v'yefot to'ar watir'ena ba'ahu. So the 7 fat, good-looking cows come up from the Nile and start grazing in the reeds around the Nile. Vahine sheva parot ahirot olot אחריהם דלות ורעות תואר מאוד ורקות בשר לא. ראיתי כהנה בכל ארץ מצרים לרוע. And then 7 other cows come up after them, dalot, meaning thin, ra'ot toar, and bad looking, poor looking, me'od, very poor looking, rakot basar. I'm guessing that this is a scribal error in one of the texts, or even here. It probably should be dakot basar, and we see the resh looks like a daled, at least in the Assyrian script. So I'm not sure where that source of that error is. It could just be sometimes the online version. Lo ra'iti kahena roa. And I've never seen, I'll again paraphrase, I've never seen any cows looking so bad in all of the land of Egypt. Verse 20. ותאכלנה הפרות הרכות והרעות את 7 הפרות הראשונות הבריאות. And those, again, we have a rakot, so maybe it's not. How do they interpret this here? Rakot. Second. Gaunt. Okay, it could come from the word reik, which means like empty. I'd have to look it up. Okay, arot it's sheva parot harishonot habriot. So the 7 poor-looking cows swallow the first 7 healthy cows. So basically, Pharaoh is just restating his dream. Verse 21, with tavona el kir bena v'lo nada'a ki ba'u el kir bena u'marehem rak asher b'tehila ba'akitz. So the 7 bad cows swallow the 7 good cows, and basically, to paraphrase verse 21, Pharaoh is now saying he couldn't even tell that they'd swallowed the good cows. They didn't look any better or any fatter, even after the 7 thin cows did not look any fatter and any healthier, even after they swallowed the 7 fat, healthy cows. They look just as bad as they did at the beginning. Why cuts? And my dream ended. I woke up. Verse 22. Wah. Ereb behalomi. Wahine sheva shibalim olot bekane had leot v'tovot. So now he tells Joseph the second dream regarding the wheat seeds, 7 fat wheat seeds on one stalk. Wahine sheva shibalim tzinumot qadim tzarehem, and 7 other grains. Tzinumot. I don't really. This word, I forgot what it means. It's not, doesn't only occurs here in the entire Tanakh. Sanam, dried up, hardened. Your Aramaic, tsunama, and sunama. Okay, that's Arabic. So yeah. So withered, dried up. So withered, thin, and blasted by the east wind. Some chot acharem came up after them. And why is the east wind such a problem? Well, if you think of the land of Israel, to the west is the Mediterranean Sea. When wind blows from the west into Israel, then it usually brings cooler, moister weather or air. If wind comes in from the east, where is it coming from? It's basically coming from the Jordanian, Saudi Arabian, and Iraqi desert. So the wind coming from the east is going to be very dry and very hot. So again, we've mentioned we could do a whole study on the east wind. The east wind is mentioned many times. The east wind is what dries up the Red Sea when the Israelites cross. The east wind is what brings in the locusts. The east wind is what brings in the Slav, how do you say that in English again? Oh, how do you say Slav in English? I forgot how they those birds, what are they called again? Oh my God, I forgot the word in English. The quail, when the Israelites clamor for food, for real food, they're sick of the manna. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in all three cases it mentions the east wind, if I'm not mistaken. Verse 24, ותבלענה השיבלים הדקות את שבע השיבלים הטובות ואומר אל חרטומים ואין מגיד לי. So the 7 thin grains swallow up the 7 fat grains. And I told these dreams, I related these dreams to the Egyptian magicians, and nobody can tell me what they mean. Verse 25. Oops, I got to bring my face back here. Disappeared again. There we go. Okay. Verse 26. Shevra parot etovot. Okay. I'm sorry. Skip to verse. Vayomer Yosef el Paro halom. Paro echad. Hu et asher Elohim oseh. Higid le Paro. So Joseph said, this dream, or the dreams of Pharaoh, are one and the same. He had 2 different dreams, but they both mean the same thing. Elohim oseh higid le Pharaoh. And this is Pharaoh. This is God telling Pharaoh what he's going to do. Again, I'm paraphrasing a little bit. 26, Sheva parot tovot, Sheva shanim, hena. Sheva shibalim tovot, Sheva shanim hena. Halom echad hu. The 7 fat cows represent 7 years, and the seven fat wheat grains represent 7 years. Hine chalom echad hu. It is in fact a single dream. Your 2 dreams are actually one and the same. שבע הפרות הרכות, הרות העולה אחריהן 7 שנים, הנה ושבע השיבלים הריקות שטופות עקדים, יהיו 7 שני רעב. And the 7 thin cows and the 7 thin grains, they represent 7 bad years, 7 years of famine. הוא הדבר אשר דיברתי אל פרעה, אשר האלוהים עושה הראה את פרעה. This is the thing that I'm saying to Pharaoh, that God, אשר האלוהים עושה הראה את פרעה. So this is what I will explain to Pharaoh. What God is intending to do to Pharaoh, he is now showing. What God is intending to do, he's now showing to Pharaoh. To Pharaoh. Verse 29. Hine sheva shanim ba'ot sava gadol b'chol eretz Mitzrayim. Behold, 7 years are coming, where there will be great sava, not satisfaction. Again, the good word in English. Plenty. Or there will be great plenty throughout all of the land of Egypt. Verse 30, and 7 years of famine will come after them. And all of the plenty that was in the land of Egypt will be forgotten. And the famine will completely finish off, will completely consume the entire land. Meaning there'll be nothing left once it's done, right? People will go out and they'll take every last thing they can get their hands on, kind of like Black Lives Matter. Verse 31, Velo yir wada'a hasava ba'aretz mipnei hara'av, hahu acharechen hikaved hu ma'od. And the good times in the land will not be remembered, will not be known in the face of the famine, of that famine that comes afterwards, because it will be very, very heavy. So in other words, right, this is, well, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Verse 32, Wa'al Ishanot Harom El Paro Pa'amayim. So, and the reason that the repetition, the doubling from the word Hishanot, meaning from the word Shnayim, meaning twice. It's where we get the word Mishneh, which means a repetition of. So, for instance, the Mishneh, which is the first major document of rabbinical law and tradition, is called the Mishneh, the Mishnah, right? And it's a repetition of the oral law, or it's meant to be memorized so it can be repeated. Either of those two interpretations. So Ali Shanot Chalam. So now Joseph is explaining to Pharaoh why he had the same dream twice. Because this thing that I've told you about, that Joseph told Pharaoh about, nachon, it is ready to go. It is prepared. It's been decided. See how they translate nachon here? Established, maybe. Yeah, the translate is established. I don't like that translation. It basically means it's set in motion, or it's set in stone. It's done, and it's coming quickly. Me'ima Elohim, it has been set in motion, or it's already been decided by God. Umimahera Elohim la'asoto, and God is hastening to do it. In other words, it's already done. It's a done deal, and it's coming soon. That's why the dream occurred twice. Now, another thing to point out, which is very interesting, is that all of Joseph's dreams have come in pairs. The first dream, which was the dreams by Joseph. Remember, he had two dreams, one not long after the other. The first one was where 12 chiefs, was it 12? I believe 12 chiefs bow down. I'm sorry, 11 chiefs bow down before Joseph. And the second one was 11 stars and the sun and the moon bow down before Joseph. So that came in pairs. The second set of dreams was when Joseph was in the jail, in the dungeon, and the cupbearer had a dream. That was the three shoots that sprouted buds and then became ripe clusters of grapes. And then the baker had a very similar dream, two opposite interpretations this time, but the baker had the dream with the 3 baskets on his head with the white bread on top. We just read that in the last chapter, right? So all of the dreams that we've seen so far have come in pairs. Okay, verse 34. So that's the interpretation of the dream. It's spot on. It's not like Rashi interpreting the dream. It's more like the Ibn Ezra is interpreting the dream, right? It makes real sense. It rings true. Everything that Joseph is saying rings true at this point. Verse 34, Yasef, Paro. And now Joseph gives advice to Paro. Yasef Paro, Yaked Idim ala Aretz. So this is what Pharaoh should do. He should appoint overseers over the land. Wahimesh et Eretz Mitzrayim b'sheva shnei hasava. And he should literally, I guess, break it into fifths is the way it's usually interpreted. Take a fifth. Let's see how Robert Alter interprets this one. So this is 4134. Okay, muster the land of Egypt in the years of plenty. So let's see here. So this is verse 34. Let's see, it's 448. Let's see why he translates that as muster. This is Robert Alter. Okay, the meaning of the verb chamesh is disputed. It really doesn't make sense, right? It could be derived from hamesh, 5, and thus refer to a scheme of dividing the land into fifths. That's the way I had translated it. Perhaps taking a levy of 20% from the crops of the good years. In chapter 47, once the great famine is underway, Joseph institutes a 20% tax on the produce of the lands that have been made over to Pharaoh. That's in chapter 47. The same root is also used for the arming or deployment of troops, and the idea here may be that Joseph is putting the whole country on quasi-military in preparation for an extended famine. So he's referring to the word chamush. For instance, it says that the Israelites went out of the land of Egypt, chamushim, which is usually translated as equipped, which in that case probably means equipped with all of the spoils of Egypt, all the gold and silver that they'd taken from their, and the smalot, and the clothing that they had taken, the garments they'd taken from their neighbors. But he's relating it back to that verse. In modern Hebrew, chamush means armed. So if a Israeli soldier is walking around with his gun, he's chamush, he's armed. Okay. So Robert Alter is giving us 3 interpretations. Himishet Eretz Mitzrayim. So maybe the best one would be, he refers us to Genesis 47. Let's look at that very quickly. That's in chapter 47. Oops, Genesis 47. I'll just do the English to make it flow a little bit more quickly. Second. So that's Genesis 47:24. Let's look at that in Hebrew. So here in the English, it says, but when the crop, okay, Joseph said to the people, now that I bought you and your land, now that I bought you and your land today for Pharaoh, here is seed for you so you can plant the ground. But when the crop comes in, give 1/5 of it to Pharaoh. The other 4/5 you may keep as seed for the fields and as food for your household, yourselves and your households and your children. Okay. But this is already during the famine. Okay, and let's look at that in the Hebrews. It's 47:23. Let me just read this to myself. Hey, so here, this is during the famine. So after Pharaoh's basically already bought the land and the people for themselves. So when you have produce, when you give 1/5 to Pharaoh, but and you can keep 4/5 for yourself for planting again. And for eating. Okay, and that's it. So that's what Robert Alter says perhaps that this is referring to, but I don't think so. This doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me because this seems to be what it says here in verse 34, take 1/5 of the land or divide the land into fifths, or have the people armed and ready over the land. then this is supposed to be done in the good times, in the 7 good years, whereas in chapter 47, when Joseph instructs the people to give Pharaoh a fifth of all the produce, that's already during the 7 bad years. So that doesn't make sense to me. I think it means, I don't know what it means. Nobody does. We could sit here and read interpretations, and we'll get a bunch of different interpretations. Maybe it does mean take 20% during the good years as well. Yeah, I guess maybe that doesn't make the most sense, actually. And then you shall gather together, yikpetzu, from the same word as kibbutz. We've all heard of a kibbutz, especially since October 7th, but everyone knew what a kibbutz was before. So gather together, and kibbutz means a joining together, right? A gathering together, where all the resources are shared. Right? You know, it's basically originally was a kind of communist agricultural community. So gather together. You shall gather together all the food from the good years, the coming good years. These coming good years, we baru bar tachat yad paro, and you shall again. Sover means again to kind of gather together or assemble it, gather it, all of the grain under the literally the hand of Pharaoh, but it means under the auspices of Pharaoh. Ochel be'arim v'shamaru. So you should place it in, I guess, food storage cities, and so it shall be preserved. You know, somewhat paraphrasing. So that's Joseph's advice to Pharaoh. Oops. That's Joseph's advice to Pharaoh in the coming 7 years. Either take a fifth of all the produce, or divide the land up into fifths, or basically militarize the land and gather together all of that food, store it up in storage areas, storage cities, and prepare for the 7 bad years. And so the food will be lepikadon, meaning for a guarantee for the land, or deposit for the land. The Hara'ab, during the 7 years of famine, Asher Ti'ena be'eretz Mitzrayim, that ha'aretz bera'av, and let the land, and so the land will not be completely destroyed or completely cut off during the famine. Okay. So I think I do want to end in about 10 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read to the end of the chapter here, and then we're going to end. Any comments, any questions? Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov. Any comments, any questions so far? So I'm going to read through to the end of this chapter with minimal or no commentary, and then we're going to end at the end of this chapter. Okay? So you can follow along in English, and I'll just make minimal comments. I'm not going to give translations here, so I want to finish in about 10 minutes. So this thing seemed good in Pharaoh's eyes and the eyes of all his servants. So Pharaoh says to his servants, can you think of anyone as wise as this man, or who has the spirit of God like this man does? So remember, Joseph has said to Pharaoh to find someone to appoint over the land, or people to appoint over the land. And Pharaoh says, is there anyone wiser than you? And he's going to appoint him over the land. There's no one more understanding and wiser. Am Chacham v'Navon. This is what Israel is called in Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 6, a nation, a wise and understanding nation. Here, Joseph is called Navon v'chacham. It's the two same words, understanding and wise person. And so basically, Joseph, with his advice, has now appointed himself. Without knowing it, he has essentially appointed himself as second in command over Egypt. Atat al biti wa al picha ishak koel ami rak akise dal mimecha. So basically, you're going to be second in command. Only my throne will be higher in command than you are. Verse 41, V'yomer Paro el Yosef, Re'eh natati otcha al kol eretz Mitzrayim. Behold, I am now placing you over the entire land of Egypt. Why? Yisar Paro etz tabato mi'al yado, why yitenota el yad Yosef. So he took his ring off of his hand and gave it and placed it on Yosef's hand. So the ring, I'm assuming, is a signet ring. Signet ring is in the ancient Near East, including in Egypt, I believe. Sure, was you would press it into wax or soft clay is basically like a signature. So basically dresses him up, gives him a gold chain. So basically he made Joseph look like 50 Cent at this point. Okay. And he paraded him in the second chariot, his second chariot. It's like instead of Air Force One, what is it that Camel Face Harris travels in? Air Force Two, I guess. That would be the equivalent of Camel Face Harris's plane today. Sherlo Yikra Lefanav and called before him Avrech, and I don't think anyone really knows what this word means. I think, again, this is the only time it ever occurs in the Tanakh. Yeah, probably a foreign origin, meaning dubious, many derivatives proposed, blah, blah, blah. So an Avrech in modern Hebrew means like a young man, a young, basically. Al kol eretz Mitzrayim, and placed him over all of the land of Egypt. Verse 44, Paro el Yosef, ani Paro ubil adecha lo yarim ish et yado wa et raglo bechol eretz Mitzrayim. I'm Paro, and no one will raise their hand or their foot without your instruction. Verse 45, V'yikra Paro Shem Yosef Safnat Paneach. So Paro then gives Joseph a new name. It's almost like Joseph is being reborn, right? Fathers give their name a son, so now it's almost like Joseph is being adopted by Pharaoh in a certain sense, and he's given his new Egyptian name or his new name, Tzafna Paneach. Again, I don't think anybody knows what this means, but the usual interpretation is the unlocker or the interpreter of hidden things. And I wonder what Robert Alter says about this. This is 45. Quickly. So the change to an Egyptian name is of a piece with the assumption of Egyptian dress and the insignia of high office. And they may mean God speaks, he lives, as Moshe Weinfeld, following the lead of Egyptologists, surmises. Okay. V'teno et Osnat bat Potifera Kohen on Leisha v'yitzei Yosef al Eretz Mitzrayim. So then he gives him a wife. So this is a sudden change in luck. I mean, talk about rags to riches. Talk about the wheel of fortune. This is unbelievable. I mean, he just came out of prison and now he's second in command. He's got a gold chain around his neck. He looks like the Egyptian version of, the Puff Daddy or whatever. And, he's riding in the second chariot. Nobody makes a move in Egypt without his say-so, except only Pharaoh is above him. He's getting a wife and soon he's going to have kids. I mean, wow. That's God right there for you. God can change a person's luck in a second, in an instant. From good to bad, like Benjamin Netanyahu, thought he was all, he thought that was it, man. He had it all figured out. He was doing the Abraham Accords, everything was hunky dory. And then in a split second, Now he's like the most hated man in all of Israel. So he gets Osnat bat Potifara, coin on, and I think Robert Alter has to say about coin on. Potifara, this is the full form of the same name borne by Joseph's old master Potiphar, but evidently refers to a different person, since Potiphar was identified as courtier and a high chamberlain, not as a priest. On is not a deity, but the name of a city later designated Heliopolis by the Greeks because of the sun worship centered there. Joseph went out over the land. The wording is a little odd. It may be associated with the end of verse 46. Okay. We say Yosef al Aretz Mitzrayim. Maybe it means he assumed control over the land of Egypt, or maybe it means he went out all over Egypt to start doing his duties. Okay. I think I am going to try to stick. Okay, I'll get to the end of this chapter, and that'll be it. ויוסף בן 30 שנה בעמדו לפני פרעה, מלך מצרים ויצא יוסף מלפני פרעה, ויעבור בכל ארץ מצרים. So Joseph is 30 years old, so that means he spent 13 years in jail because he was taken down to Egypt when he was 17, or maybe it mentions explicitly that he was placed in jail when he was 17, I don't remember. But we know that he was 17 years old when he was, when he had the incident with his brothers, where his brothers threw him in the pit, and then he ended up being sold in Egypt. Verse 47, Asa aretz b'sheva shnei ha-sava lekim matsim. So then we have the 7 years of abundance. Verse 48, ויקבוץ את כל אוכל 7 שנים אשר היו בארץ מצרים, וייתן אוכל בערים אוכל, שדה העיר אשר סביבותיה נתן בתוכה. So they gathered all of the food. They said they stored up all the food in the cities, or in the city, in the, I wonder how alternate terms. That one 48, I guess, in the storage cities or the food cities. Let's see, what was that? 48. This is in the cities. Okay. So basically, all the food was gathered in the city during the 7 good years. Why? It's Bor Yosef Bar Kecholayam Harbe Meod Ad Ki Hadal Nispor Ki En Mispar. So basically, Kecholayam, that is also, it's stated that the Israelites will be Kecholayam, as much as sand on the sea, and this same phrase is now being used to speak about how much food Yosef stored up, so much that it couldn't even be counted. This is almost reminiscent of the blessings given to Abraham. Can't remember exactly where it says Kachol Hayam. There are a number of different. The stars were Abraham, Kachol Hayam. I don't remember. Maybe Jacob. At any rate, the same phrases that are used to show how much Israel will be multiplied, that they'll be like the sand on the seashore, and there will be so many that they will not be able to be counted. This is now, these same phrases are being used for the amount of grain that Yosef stored up. Verse 50, Yosef yulad shnei banim, b'terem tavo shnat hara'av, asher yalda lo, snat ben Potifera. Excuse me one second. Okay. So before the 7 bad years, he gave birth to 2 sons. We know who they are. That's Ephraim and Menashe. Actually, Menashe and Ephraim. V'ikra Yosef et Shem ha-bechor Menashe. Ki nashani Elohim et kol amali et kol beit avi. So nashani, you can understood is forget, made me forget. Just forget all of my suffering and all of my father's house. So Yosef is now assumed a new identity. And I think this is very relevant to why, so a lot of people ask the question, why didn't Yosef, now he's out of jail, why didn't he contact his father? Why didn't he contact his brothers? Well, he'd been through so much at this time that it's almost like, he'd been captured. He had a whole new identity. It's almost like, and maybe I'll end on this horrible note, but the women and children that were, Israeli women and children that were captured in Gaza, if they had not been returned, I guess almost all of them are returned now, then they would have been assimilated into Gazan society. The women would have basically become the wives of Hamasniks, of Muslims, or the concubines of Muslims, and the children would have been the stepchildren, or the kind of the slaves of the Muslims down there. This is the way that people fought wars, and still obviously fight wars if they're not fighting according to Western laws. So those women, let's take the women, they would have become Muslims and concubines of Arabs for the rest of their lives, and they would have had no choice at that point, since they weren't going to go back, to assume their new identity, just basically forget about their old life. And one can imagine that if that had happened for long enough, then they wouldn't even want to go back to their old life, because it would be too painful, or they already have a new identity. As crazy as that sounds, this is the way that nations fought and fight wars to this very day. If you're not an idiotic Westerner, then you just lose wars, as America has since World War II, and as Israel has since 1967. It was the last war Israel won decisively. So, and I think that's what's going on here. Yosef, he's been given a new identity. He's been given a new name, Tzafnat Paneach. He's almost been reborn here. He's now an Egyptian. And he just psychologically can't, it's like a captive. He can't go back. He has his new identity. And I think I've said for many, many years, the reason, and I'm going to end on this, the reason that Joseph did not contact his father, even when he could, and even when he saw his brothers come down, it's almost like, you see, he was like shocked, right? It was like a blast from the past. It took him a long time to process the whole thing, to figure out what to do. That's why he started acting a little bit crazy. He couldn't psychologically bring himself to go back to his old life. He had this new life here, and he had this new identity, this new life, and this is what he had to embrace. And that's the reason I've always said for years, if not decades, the reason that Joseph never contacted his father is because psychologically speaking, he just couldn't. He couldn't go back to that old life. He had a new life, and he couldn't go back to the old life. And I think that's exactly expressed in this verse here. Okay, so the Menashe, who becomes one of the full tribes of Israel, right? Yosef is later, when he's reunited with his family. The tribes, well, we have the whole incident where Jacob on his deathbed basically promote Menashe and Ephraim, Joseph's sons, to full status as tribes, or as sons of Jacob. They basically jump up a generation, or as if jump up a generation, but here we see that Menashe is named Ki Nishani Elohim et Kol Amalim. God made me forget all of my suffering, et Kol Beit Avi, and all of my father's house. So Menashe actually means I forgot my father's house. Okay, forgetting my father's house. Okay, he's embraced his new identity. He cannot go back to his old identity. He's been captured. He's been in jail for 13 years. He's had a lot of time to just, I don't know, basically be disconnected from his old life. And now he's thrust into this new situation, and he just has to move forward. He has to embrace his new identity. And that's the reason. It's the same reason that if the Israeli women, I guess there's still some Israeli women, they may end up this way, are not returned to Israel, then they will eventually embrace their new identities. As horrible as it sounds, this is what will happen. They will embrace their new identities, Muslim women, and they will become the wives or concubines of Muslims in the Gaza Strip. And they won't look back, because at that point they can't look back. They have a new identity, they have a new life, and it would be, psychologically, they just couldn't go back at that point. Because women especially, they will take on the identity of whatever household they join. When they're growing up, we see this throughout the Torah, when they're growing up, they take on the identity of their father's household. When they marry, they take on the identity of their husband's household. If they're captured by another nation, then they take on the identity of that nation and that household that they now belong to. That's why status in the Torah does not go by the woman, it goes by the man. Again, that's why the rabbis, I think, deliberately attempted to destroy the nation of Israel by switching it over, go by the woman when it doesn't make sense. The woman assimilates into whatever household she becomes part of, just as Ruth did when she assimilated into the household of Boaz. And I think I will just read to the end of this chapter, and then we'll end. ואת שם השני קרא אפרים, כי יפרני אלוהים בארץ עניי. God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering. The famine begins, verse 53, ותכלנה שבע שני שבה אשר היה בארץ מצרים. So 7 good years came to an end. Verse 54, ותכלנה שבע שני הרעב, לבוא כאשר אמר יוסף, היא רעב בכל הארצות, בכל ארץ מצרים היה So there was a famine all over the place, but only in the land of Egypt. In the land of Egypt, there was food. Verse 55, ותראה כל ארץ מצרים ויצעק העם אל פרעה, ללכם יאמר פרעה לכל מצרים לכו, אל יוסף אשר יאמר לכם תעשו. So there was famine all over the land of Egypt, and the people cried out, Pharaoh, and Pharaoh said, go to Yosef and do whatever he tells you to do. So Pharaoh is really, just as Potiphar trusted Yosef, now Pharaoh trusts Yosef, just as the Sadat Tabachim, the head warden in the jail trusted Joseph, just as Joseph's father trusted him, Jacob trusted him. So everywhere Joseph goes, he ends up gaining the trust of the people he's among through his wisdom, his ability to interpret dreams. He's always put in a position of responsibility. Verse 56, והרעב היה על כל פני הארץ, ויפתח יוסף את כל אשר בהם וישבור למצרים, ויחזק הרעב בארץ מצרים. So it was all over the land, all over the face of the earth. And again, the face of the earth, clearly the entire land. Okay, so Yosef opened up all of the food that they had in Egypt and sold it. וישבור למצרים. Okay, so he sold to all of the people of Egypt. So again, I guess the point I want to make is that even though it says all over the world, it doesn't mean all over the world. It means in that area. Maybe that sheds some light on the Noah's Ark story. Understand what I'm saying? Verse 57, in other words, it said the flood covered the entire world, but maybe it doesn't just meant in the local area. Verse 57, and all of the people, literally all the land, but all the people of the surrounding lands is really what it means, came to Egypt, Lishbor el Yosef, to purchase from Joseph, because the famine was very heavy throughout all of the surrounding lands. And again, it says, which means, if I were to interpret this the same way, we would interpret the flood, Noah's flood covering the entire world, then this would literally mean the entire world came to Egypt. We know that's an impossibility, right? This is not antediluvian. This is now, times where things are more normal, so we couldn't say that the entire world, right? People didn't come from South America to Egypt to buy food from Yosef, right? So obviously, this just means the surrounding land. Because the famine was heavy throughout the entire world, but it doesn't mean the entire world. It means throughout all of that area of the world, all of that area. Okay, that's the end of chapter 41. And with that, we're going to end. Any questions, any comments before we do? If not, then we'll finish it off here. And I thank you all for joining us here. This has been the World Alliance of Qara'im weekly Torah study. Miketz. And I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom and a Shavua Tov, depending on where you are in the world. We'll go out with a little bit of music as usual. And Be'esarat Yahweh, with the help of Yahweh, we'll see you all again next week. So Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov. Hope you enjoyed the study. If you did, please, again, share it, subscribe on YouTube, just get the word out, and let's get this study really, multiplying by leaps and bounds. You're welcome, Ruvain. My pleasure. My pleasure. My pleasure, everyone. This is what I love doing. If I didn't have to have a day job, I would do this. Is what I would do day and night. If anyone's a multi-billionaire or knows a multi-billionaire who would like to, you know, financially support me to do Torah all the time, then send them my way. I'd be more than happy to. Okay, so till then, actually, I don't even want that, because once you take money from people, then you're beholden to them, and I don't want to be beholden to anybody. I'd actually rather just, I wish I'd had enough money to not have to work a day job, and then I could just do Torah all day long. At any rate, neither here nor there. Let's which might explain, by the way, why some Karaites who shall remain unnamed go out and pander to Christians, you know, and God forbid would ever say a word against Christianity that might piss off the potential donors. Okay, let's get the music going. And I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom and a Shavua Tov.